Today's bike check is the 1985 Haro Sport from Haro Bicycles. Obviously, Bob Haro was the father of freestyle, very innovative, and 1985 was a very pivotal year for freestyle bikes, for the industry, for the trends as far as what was going to happen with this so-called fad that turned into a sport. Um, at this point, Haro was making a couple different bikes, the Haro Master, the Haro Sport, and the Haro FST. The Master was designed pretty much for flatland with the double top tubes. The Sport was an all-around bike. It had the what became the classic single top tube to platform on the top tube of the frame. And in 85 is the first year that they started incorporating the chainstay platforms where they changed the layout as far as the overall design of the dropout and the chainstays to create a platform on the frame. So 85 was the first year they did that. Also, they started doing the bolt. This is the first year for any kind of bolt-on fork stands. They always had available the axle pegs where you could screw on the pegs to the forks. I mean, at least since like Skyway and so forth was doing those small pegs. But this became the year of GT versus Haro versus Hutch, basically. The Trickstar was out, the GT Pro Performer. The Haro had a couple different offerings. And 85, again, being pivotal as far as this is the year of the colors. Everybody knows the Green with Envy ad, the old ad from Haro Bicycles. The green was always synonymous with the Master. And anybody that's a true fan of Haro bikes or this era of bikes, the blue was the Haro Sport color, period. So 85, very pivotal year. A lot of innovations. The rotor had come out. They were offering, Peregrine was offering these mags now in addition to the Skyway Tough wheels. Wasn't long after that, the 48 spoke wheels came out and so forth. So that's the background of this bike. And Ron Wilkerson made this bike famous in the air and on the ground. He was a trickster of all kinds. He was a touring guy since the days of Two Hip with him and Rich Avella. And he was one of the most well-rounded riders at the time, and probably one of the most seen riders, because he was on tour in the U.S. and internationally, and definitely gave Haro a lot of praise, and a lot of kids bought bikes because of Ron Wilkerson, no doubt about it. So the rundown on this bike, this is a bone stock catalog build. The bike is really original. In fact, I think the only things I don't have factory on this are the grips, the tires, and the seat post. Pretty much everything else in the bike is as it came. This isn't a bike that dates back in my collection more than a couple of years. I saw it on the BMX Museum, and pretty much the dead ringer is if you've got the Anlun stem, or Anlun, whatever you might want to call it. This came out before the Haro stem in 86. They started doing basically the same manufacturer, Anlun, made the stem with the top cap that had the Haro stamping in it. This came before that, and it didn't really match, but out of the catalogs, when you bought parts from Taiwan to spec on these bikes, you didn't get a lot of choices. You didn't have a lot of paint matching and so forth. A lot of the stuff came out of different factories. So that was the dead ringer for me when you see in good shape that Anlun stem. This also has the Haro handlebars, which were innovative for that year. They were the first ones to do like crossbar knurling, the lowered shaped crossbar like that for surfers and at the time, bar hops and things like that, like Eddie Fiola and the GT Pro Performer bars and so forth. They all started getting that swoopy shape. Wasn't too long after that, Redline came out with the forklifter bars with the shaped crossbar as well. So these were pretty beefy handlebars. Of course, the shape has a little something to be desired. This is the early rendition of these bars, which kind of have that upturned shape. Not awesome, but tolerable when you ride it. Feels a little different. This is before bikes came with rotors or gyros or anything. So this bike did have the POTS mod where the brake goes down through the stem, out the fork. This bike also uses the FS 880 brakes, which were new and innovative as far as the low lever on the caliper itself. It was basically a modified 890 caliper that had that lower arm on it, so it would clear the down tubes of the bikes. In the meantime, most of the companies were making raised down tubes. GT had the bent down tube. Haro has this huge gusset that was always synonymous with their bikes, which gave you a little bit more clearance here for doing tail whips and things like that. The other thing that came out was this, which was eliminated the need for the buff guard and saved your vans for a couple extra months. The flush-mounted Allen bolt that they used on the back of the caliper, that was something they used on road bikes at the time period, and somebody was innovative enough to do that and put it on freestyle bikes. The rest of the bike, this bike is original paint, original decals. You can see some crazing and so forth on the decals. As far as I'm concerned, this is the perfect condition for a freestyle bike. You've got the old Bob Haro decals on the back. So all the decals are present and accounted for the time period, and the classic H on the head tube. Excellent shape. The bike's in great shape. The Paragon Master wheels, this is one of the first bikes to come out with the offset spoke mag wheels, factory. And these are in such nice shape. You can see still have the serial number on those. The Paragon Master's bright. Not a lot of brake marks on these wheels. Just super nice. Tapered fork legs. The dropouts are in great shape. These often broke if you rode these bikes hard. So this bike was not ridden hard and put away wet like some of them. You'll notice no cracks here either. Anybody that knows Haros knows those are the spots you look for the brakes on older bikes. The rest of the spec is just as it came from the factory. Anloon chain ring, the two-piece chain ring design, and this is exactly how they came from the factory. Also the chromoly one-piece crank, OPC it says right on there, so the screening is still on there. Very odd to have that last that long. The classic Victor pedal, which is classic for these bikes of this time period, kind of the MKS Graphite X knockoff. Diacomp hinge seat clamp, Anloon style seat post. And again, this is not the correct seat post on this bike. It would have the real small fluted style seat post. And of course, 1985, the year of the Dominator, had it on all their bikes. So that's the spec on this bike. That's the overall scope of everything. In my eyes, it's a bike that's necessary to be in your timeline of BMX, just because the blue Haro Sport was synonymous. A couple things that I display with the bike. These are the birth of freestyle. Special vans came out last year. Some Haro wet weather gloves. The 1985 number plate. Also the 1985 catalog. And this is the era of the colors. You can see the green Master, the red FST, and the blue Sport. That's the colors that were synonymous. In my opinion, after this, in 1986, when all the bikes were available in all the colors, it kind of diminished the quality of each one, synonymous. And each rider pretty much rode their own bikes. And it was always Ron Wilkerson on a blue Haro Sport, high above Venice Beach or on the beach doing Miami hoppers or whatever he was doing. So that's why it's in my collection, the 1985 Haro Sport.